My grandfather used to tell a story from the old world about how this old wise rabbi was sitting in his study, studying the Talmud, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and he says, come in, and one of his congregants comes in and starts telling him a story about, Rabbi, my partner, he's not treating me fairly, he took the money, and he's stealing the money, and the rabbi listens patiently and wisely as the man goes on and on and on, and the man unburdens himself, and after about 15 or 20 minutes, the rabbi looks at him and says, you're right. And the man feels vindicated, he feels acquitted, he feels good about himself, he gets up, he walks out, and the rabbi returns to his study. After a while, there's another knock on the door, and the rabbi calls out, come in, and it's the first man's partner. And he comes, he's like, Rabbi, my partner wasn't fair, I had to protect myself, I had to do this and this. And the rabbi listens patiently and wisely as the man unburdens himself, and the rabbi looks at him and says, you're right. And the man feels good, and he gets up and he walks out. And the rabbi's wife, the Rebbitzin, is in the kitchen off the study, and she's seen everything that's transpired. And she comes in, she goes, my dear husband, how can you tell the first man that he's right and then tell the second one that he's right? They can't both be right. And the rabbi thinks for a moment and says, you're right. And so we're here to talk about mediation, best practices. What can we do to resolve dispute? There are lots of really prominent mediators and negotiators and divorce lawyers here. What can I do? This is a broad and deep subject. We can't even scratch the surface. We're shortchanging you. We can spend 8 hours on any one of the topics that Jan or I will talk about. So I thought, what is the most important message that I can deliver here to you today? And I want to talk a little bit about a talk that I generally give that I call Divorce Without Destruction. Overcoming the psychological imperatives that make good people fight viciously. Why do they do this? And what can we do as lawyers? And as part of that, I want to share with you a story, something that I learned at a troubling time and a troubling incident in my life. And I'll take you back to October 20th, 1997. I was living in an upper middle class, quiet residential neighborhood of Brooklyn. It was a beautiful place. And I had two beautiful children. I had just finished, I was working at Morgan, Lewis & Bockius, the 8th largest law firm in the country. I had just finished clerking for Judge Edward R. Corman in the Eastern District of New York. And the only problem with life at that point was that I was going through a rather nasty divorce. We had been fighting for a year and a half. It didn't have to be nasty. My wife we got married under Jewish law, we lived under Jewish law. I looked at my wife, I said, you don't want to live with me anymore. I understand that. Let's assemble 3 rabbis, we'll allow them to decide the terms of the divorce, and we'll get divorced. You're not entitled to divorce under the laws of the state of New York, you're not entitled to divorce under Jewish law. Let's assemble 3 rabbis, we'll get divorced. And she, of course, said, I have nothing to say to you, talk to my lawyers. Unfortunately, my father-in-law, very rich man, he had his name emblazoned on some of the institutional buildings in our neighborhood, and there was no negotiating. And so the fight went on. And so on October 20th, we were living in our beautiful home. I had had the children for the first 4 days of a holiday, and I took them with me to synagogue. I brought them home. We gave them breakfast, and their mother came home, picked them up, and they left. And I left the house to go to Morgan, Lewis & Bockius. I got my books together. I walked down the street. I crossed the street, and this loud shot rang out. It felt as if somebody had some big lug had taken a baseball bat and whacked me across my leg as hard as he can. I sat down on a stoop. A friend of mine called an ambulance and the volunteer ambulance service, and within moments they were there. They put me in a gurney. They tried to get an IV needle into my arm. And for some reason, they couldn't get the IV needle into a vein. And that amazed me, because generally I have no problem giving blood or getting transfusion, IV needles or needles. I have big veins, beautiful veins, the best veins I have.
Perfect.
And for some reason, they couldn't get the IV needle into me. And I wondered about that. And I was to learn, both by the EMTs and the emergency room nurses, that our bodies are a fantastic survival organism. When the human body is violated, the autonomic nervous system, the amygdala kicks in, and without us ever making any conscious choice, the body goes into protection mode. And it draws blood away from our legs and feet and inserts us. Knows that we have to protect the vital organs, the heart, the lungs, the brain, the mind, the head. And the body pulls out the blood from the alternate organs and circulates it in the core of the body. And so my veins have become a fraction of what they really were. and what they normally are, and they couldn't get the IV needle in. Why do I tell you about this? Because this has implications for the work that we do. The same thing that happens physically also happens psychologically. So as we're walking along and we hear a rustling in the bushes, the amygdala goes, warning, saber-toothed tiger, run away. And it pumps extra blood to the arms if we're going to fight, to the legs, the fight, flight, or freeze response. And we can run faster, we can jump higher, and it helps protect us. But there's a side effect to that. As part of the body, as part of the amygdala protecting us, it shuts down anything that the amygdala thinks is not critically important. So all of a sudden we forget about the basket of blueberries we've been picking all morning. We forget about next month's mortgage payment. We forget about studying for the exam or going on the interview or cultivating new clients. That all pales in comparison when we're faced with immediate danger. And of course, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When our basic needs are threatened, it kicks in, and we can't think of anything else. Now, of course, the system doesn't always work to our benefit. It sometimes backfires on us. So, for example, when somebody's in a life-threatening situation, the life-threatening situation may have gone by, but the person's mind is still stuck in that danger, and so PTSD has a huge effect where people can't worry about getting to work on time or paying their mortgage bill. They still feel they still have the fear that's driving them. And that's the amygdala gone awry for our sophisticated world. So, what are we talking about this? Now, some of the other problems of the amygdala, of this autonomic nervous system reaction, is that perception is not really reality. Our perception can be swayed. And so, for example, you can be in a place where you feel really, really scared, but there is no danger. Of course, Hollywood, of course, the amusement parks, they know how to play on all of this. We have roller coaster rides, we have scary movies, everything to trigger the amygdala into thinking that you're scared, even though you're not in real danger. Why is this relevant? Because all controversy is threatening. We get scared. Maybe when you have to pick up the phone to call a nasty opposing counsel, and all of a sudden you feel your heart beating quickly and your palms get sweaty. We're just wired that way. The autonomic nervous system. So 500 years ago, if somebody was rejected and they were locked outside the city wall gates, the next day they'd find a pile of jackal bones left over. And so rejection was an existential threat. So when we go to a party and somebody we like walks away from us abruptly, we're like, why did that person not like me? Why didn't they like me? Why didn't they like me? And the mind continues to perseverate over it because it triggers that fear that 500 years ago, that was a life-threatening fear. So all conflict is threatening, divorce even more so. We have feelings of failure. Why couldn't I make it work? Why couldn't the other person be the person I wanted them to be? All the time and effort I put into this, am I going to die alone? What's going to happen? My financial future, my relationship with the children, all of this gets triggered, and so we're very scared. So what can we as lawyers do to overcome this fear? How do we, and so when our client's amygdala is threatened, they don't see things that are right in front of their eyes because they can't see them. Why is it so often that we give other people this advice, and when we're in that situation, we forget the same advice that we were so smart to offer to others? Because when we're threatened, when we feel threatened, our vision becomes tunneled, and we can only see what we think is threatening us, and we don't see other options. And so what can we as lawyers do? Of course, there's mediation, but we'll come back to that. Of course, there are plenty of articles that facts don't change people's minds. Throwing facts at them won't do it. So what can we do to make clients? Well, you tell somebody, hey, calm down. That always works, right? Or stop being so dramatic. Try that and see where that gets you. You're blowing things out of proportion, or don't worry, or the good old favorite, trust me. I know what I'm doing. There's nothing to worry about. So all of that doesn't work. We know that that doesn't work. So what can we do to take our clients out of the state of mind that prevents them from coming to a resolution that benefits them? They're perpetuating. We have clients that make the wrong thing. How many times have you had a client who focuses on something that's not important to the exclusion of the thing that's really important to them? We're trying to help them. They can't come with us. What can we do to help them? Well, if it's fear that triggers the amygdala and makes it impossible for them to hear us, then what we have to do is make clients feel safe and protected. And if we can make our clients feel safe and protected, then they'll be able to expand their vision, they don't feel threatened, and they can help explore the possibilities of resolution. So a couple of years ago for the section, I wrote an article called Make More Money by Being More Ethical, and clients report that the biggest concern, if you want to get clients back, the most important thing you can do to have repeat business is to show clients care and concern. Don't worry about how much you charge them. Don't worry about winning the case. If you show your clients care and concern, they are going to send other clients your way, and they're going to come back to you. That is the most important thing to your clients. So how can we show clients care and concern? Well, give them your undivided attention. Don't check your emails while they're doing it. And don't take other phone calls. Don't show them that they're unimportant. So you might demonstrate your concern for clients by not making them wait when they arrive at your office, by escorting your clients into your office, escorting them out. Do not divert attention while looking at emails, checking phones. I mean, if you can at all avoid taking other phone calls, don't do it. And give your clients your complete and undivided attention whenever they're with you. Which brings me to the next point. The most important thing you can do to people is to listen to them. Now, I'm talking about a different kind of listening. This isn't the listening that we're used to, where I'm just listening to you so that I know when I get to jump in and cut you off, or I'm going to argue. I just want to hear the words so that I can jump in at you. But give somebody your undivided attention. Listen to them completely and fully. Just understand the other person. And this is so important in so many aspects of life. And it forms the basis of all mediation. And it will form the basis of a good attorney-client relationship. It'll form the basis of the ability of me as a lawyer or as a mediator to be able to escort somebody into a resolution if I listen to them. And of course, I tell people, as many of you may know this, there's a mediator's technique to instantly reduce your partner's anger at you by 50%. If your partner is ever angry at you, I will give you an instant technique to reduce your partner's anger by 50%. It comes with a caveat that I'll do in a moment, and it sounds simple, but it's not easy, and that is repeat back to your partner what you think your partner is trying to say. Let me see if I understand you. When I came late to the elaborate anniversary party that you planned, you thought that meant that I don't value our relationship. You thought that that meant that I take you for granted. You thought that that was a reflection of my commitment to you. And by repeating it back, because all of us humans, all we really want is to be understood, deeply understood, and appreciate or accept for who we are. If you're going to disagree with me, I'm okay if you disagree with me if you understood what I said. But if you didn't understand what I said, I'm going to keep, no, but you didn't hear me. And so often we misunderstood. So if you repeat back to the person, you say, did I get it all? Did I miss anything? And invariably the person is going to say, yes, you missed the most important part, and then hear them again and repeat it back again. I go more into this. You have 43 pages of my materials. Take a look at the table of contents, choose what you want. And I go into it a bit more detail. I'm giving it short shrift here, and I apologize for that. Now, as I said before, it comes with the big caveat, danger, Will Robinson, danger. The thing you need to be very careful about is if you allow even the hint of facetiousness or condescension or irony into your voice, you are done for. You repeat back, let me see if I understand. Not, well, you mean to say that. Well, you think that. That would be like spraying lighter fluid on the embers, even the hint of condescension. Now this, just recently I was hit upside the head with how powerful this is, where the New York Times reported how this Austrian woman saved her life by using this technique. This Austrian woman was out bicycling, and a car came up behind her and smacked into the back of her car, knocked her over. The driver ran out, threw a hood over her head, trussed her up, carted her off to an abandoned house that his grandmother had left him somewhere in the Bavarian woods. And she knew she was not coming out alive, and she was tied to a chair there. And what was most disturbing was that she had a 15-week-old baby boy at home, and she knew that she was never going to see her baby boy again. And as at some point he took off her hood, the hood over her head, and she looked around the room to see what she saw. And she noticed some orchids in the corner. And she decided to make that the topic of conversation. And she says, wow, those look like beautiful orchids. You must tend to them very carefully. I have orchids at home, and I know how much care and devotion they require. You must put in a lot of work. And she gets him talking about his orchids. And after he talks about his orchids, he talks about his mother and how she was an alcoholic, and he grew up without a mother, and what a troubled childhood he had. And then, of course, he went into his relationships with his paramours and how they all betrayed him and how he was really angry at that. And after a while, he had really talked himself out. And she said something like, well, you know, I have a 15-week-old baby boy at home. Imagine what his life is going to be like if he never got to see his mother again. The man drove her home. He fixed her bicycle. He drove her and her bicycle home. He's sitting in prison right now. But that is the power of this technique. And so, show your clients care and concern, make them feel safe. Of course, do the hard work, learn the facts, show your clients that you know the facts of their case better than they do, that you know the law. Not make them feel safe, but actually make them safe. Of course, operate with full integrity, show them so that they feel safe, because they know if you're not going to operate with integrity to other people, then you won't do that with them. And avoid surprises. A client should never, ever be surprised. Nobody likes surprises. As I wrote in my article, anytime a client is surprised, the lawyers drop the ball. So the client should never be surprised. Now, some of you may be saying, well, how do I speak to a client? My client's off the wall. How do I speak with them with dignity and integrity? Well, I'll cite Dale Carnegie's rule number 1. Everybody thinks they're right. And in January 16, I was gobsmacked with 2 instances of how. So as you all recall, probably, El Chapo was recaptured. Now, El Chapo was responsible for 34,000 deaths. He was the biggest drug dealer in the world. He once had somebody killed because the man refused to shake his hand. He killed 3 people with his own hands. You'd think he'd know he was a bad person. And what does he tell Sean Penn in the interview that got him recaptured? He said, I was a good guy. I never attacked anybody. If they attacked me, I defended myself. And later, as my head was still spinning from this story, State of Israel released a handwritten letter that Adolf Eichmann wrote to the then president of Israel. And Adolf Eichmann, as you recall, was the architect of the final solution, the murder of 3 of my 4 grandparents and numerous of my extended family. And what did Eichmann write to the president of Israel? He says, sure, the head guys were really bad people, but we underlings, we were just doing our job. So everybody thinks they're a good person. If that's what Eichmann and El Chapo think, then imagine what your client thinks, what your opposing counsel thinks, what your opposing... The moment you talk to somebody as if they're a monster, all hope is lost. Treat everybody with dignity and respect. The most important thing you can do when going into a negotiation session is have patience. If you go and if you wait for the last minute to resolve it, you'll be too tense, you won't have the patience. You need to slow down, calm down. And of course, it's all about perceptions. And we could change, and we can be sure that we're right. And so I love the scientific experiment where you take 3 pails, you fill one outside pail with cold water, the other outside pail with hot water, and the middle pail with tepid water. Put your hands in the 2 outside pails, let them acclimate for 60 or 90 seconds, and then at the same time take your 2 outside hands and put them into the center pail, and you can swear that one hand is burning hot and the other hand is freezing cold, even though you're looking at the same water and you know it's impossible. So even though we are completely sure. Finally, I want to share with you the story in 1502 of the little town in Florence. And in Florence, in the, hold on, let me show you, Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral, they had a big block of marble. It was a 16-foot block of marble. And some apprentice had drilled a hole through it, and everybody said this block is ruined. There's nothing we can do with this. And some of the sculptors said, wait, we know this guy, this young guy, 26 years old in Rome. His name is Michelangelo. Maybe he could do something with it. And Michelangelo took a look at this block. He says, yeah, if I turn the statue a little bit, I can avoid the hole. We could do something. And the Mayor Piero Soderini, said, no, this is a waste, don't bother. He said, yeah, give it to me. What do you have to lose? And so Michelangelo started to sculpt something, and he came up with this little statue that we know today as David. And as he was just about completed with the statue, Mayor Soderini comes in and takes a look at the statue and goes, Michelangelo's beautiful, but the nose, you don't have the nose right. Something's wrong with it. Michelangelo knew it was a nose. It was a good nose. He didn't have to redo it. But instead of fighting with the mayor, he said, you know, you're right. Come with me. And he escorts him to the scaffold. And as he's walking to the scaffold, Michelangelo grabs his hammer with one hand and grabs a chisel with the other. And as he grabs a chisel, he grabs a handful of marble dust in the other arm. And he climbs up to the first landing of the scaffolding. He tells the mayor, you stand here. And he knew that by positioning the mayor there, he had changed the mayor's perspective. And Michelangelo continued climbing up and puts a chisel there, starts to bang, and as he bangs with the chisel, he allows the marble dust to fall down. And so even though he didn't change the statue, he steps back, he says, Mayor, what do you think now? And the mayor goes, oh, Prima, it's beautiful now. And so that's how it got. So remember, people don't fight because they're nasty or vicious. People fight because they're scared. They believe they don't have a choice. And when people are scared, they fight. And what we can do is give them the safety so that they can now expand their horizons, expand their vision. And that will give them the safety of allowing them to reach a deal, to reach a resolution without destroying everything they've loved in the process. Thank you very much.